have a line in my message next week um, from like a old Dr. Seuss poem that is one of my favorites. It goes, ba, 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 ba. Not that
Getting to
song.
know you. Is that?
I've heard there are troubles of more than one kind. Some come from ahead and some come from behind. But I've bought a big bat and I'm all ready. You see, now my troubles are gonna have troubles with me.
Nice. Like it.
It's awesome.
I'm doing David versus Goliath. And
Yeah. Nice.
ending my message with that quote.
Very cool.
So, no, you're looking at your giants wrong. They should be scared of you, not you scared of them.
Everybody, welcome to the Odd Testament podcast. My name is Ryan.
I'm
Getting to
Eric.
know you.
Oh my
Getting
gosh.
to know you.
Too soon, Greg. Too soon.
Sorry. I'm
And
great.
that's Greg. Yeah.
Guys, welcome in. Thanks for being here with me.
Yeah.
To all the
Sorry
listeners.
for your eardrums.
Yeah, right. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We are three pastors who love the scriptures, and we love to break them down. And if you're here for a fresh perspective on scripture, maybe you're exploring faith, or you just want to hear some weird, maybe funny stories, you're in the right place, because this is where we dive into the weird, strange stories of the Bible. And
Heck
so today we are going to get into a strange story in the book of Daniel. But before we do, guys, you know what it's time for.
Getting to know you. Getting to know you. Getting to know you. Getting to know you.
It's time for our getting to know you question.
Getting
It's
to
time
know
for our-
you.
Yes, it's time for our
Have we
getting to
ever
know
done
you
that
question.
before?
And I forget where I heard this quote before, but you never know you can never know somebody better than when you see them in a fight, or when they get in a fight, or something like that. Like, getting in a fight helps you know who somebody is, right? And so my question is kind of around a fight today. All right, let me set up the scenario and then I'll give you the question.
Okay.
A total stranger picks a fight with you in a bar. Okay, are you guys going to bars?
Every night.
Dang. Okay. A total stranger picks a fight with you in a bar. The stranger is exactly your size and weight. You have done nothing to this individual to warrant such
Fatty.
animosity, but the stranger really wants to fight you. And to make matters weirder, this stranger wants to fight you on the moon. And this is somehow possible. You and the stranger will be transported to the surface of the moon, outfitted in ultra thin and very comfortable spacesuits rigged with lightweight oxygen tanks. You will then be expected to fight for 10 3-minute rounds. You can't use weapons. There are no rules, and you cannot quit unless you or your opponent are knocked unconscious. 1, do you accept this challenge? And if yes, what is your moon fighting strategy?
I mean, I don't want to be a wet blanket, but no.
Wet blanket.
Like, I mean, no, that's no, I totally would love to do that. Here's the thing. This is the problem with fighting someone the exact size and weight of me, is because I'm smaller. I usually just go for low blows. If I'm like, it's all groin and crotch. It's grab and twist. And that's how I win. So
Nice.
if I can do that on the moon, and it means that I can get even lower, because usually it's just a straight ahead, but if I can uppercut it, You know, that I think that's I think that's a
Mm.
strategy. And plus with an uppercut, you know, low gravity, they go up into the atmosphere and bye bye loser. I think that's what I would do.
So it sounds to me like you are accepting the challenge.
If I if I got drug up to the moon, I would be so mad. I would uppercut the crotch of the guy trying to fight me into the atmosphere. Yes, that would be how I do it.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
See, it wasn't that hard to answer that question, right?
Listen, you gave the option. Like,
Yeah. That's it.
I shouldn't have given the
Would you-
option then. I
Yeah.
shouldn't have given the option.
Yeah, because my answer is the same. No, I wouldn't. I don't know you. I'm not going to the moon with you.
We're lovers,
So-
not fighters.
Yeah. If since the point of the question is to say yes, I'll say yes. And I would go after their oxygen. Yeah.
From
So
the
no
testicles.
weapons. I would just start.
Oh,
Well, you can't. Whatever strategy you have, you can't do because, yeah, you haven't really worked out in zero gravity. 30 minutes. I have like 30 seconds of cardio available for a fight. Man, I don't know, but that person would too. So
I think it was Sun Tzu that said,
yes,
when fighting on the moon, gravity is no longer your friend.
yep.
Yeah.
The Art of Lunar War is his follow-up book to The Art of War. I think that's important. Yep.
Ryan,
The
Um,
enemy of my enemy on the moon
the enemy
is
of my enemy is
sort
an
of my
alien.
friend. Yeah, exactly.
So, guys, of course, I'm accepting this challenge. Of course. And go big or go home. I mean, and I have two strategies, kind of like that I could maybe employ. So first is like I'm thinking UFC. You know those guys who are like only like wrestlers. They're not very good strikers, and so they immediately go to the ground. And then there's either even some of those guys who like they'll kind of crab walk towards you on the ground as the other guy.
Yeah.
Well, I will be that guy. I'll get on the ground on my back, just waiting until this fool comes to try to do something, and then I'll leg press him into deep space. So that's my
Love it.
first strategy.
Yeah.
Um,
Jiu-jitsu.
And if that doesn't work, then I will take a page out of Matt Damon's book in Interstellar. Remember when him and Matthew McConaughey get in a fight on that icy planet, and then he starts headbutting, boom, to try to break his glass? That's my last resort. I'll just bam, and then like once it breaks, it like the vacuum sucks his eyes out and all that. Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah. Then you win the fight and you have dinner.
Exactly. How is this a bad thing?
Yeah, right. I think we're all in agreement. Ryan for sure wins on any fight on Earth, but now the moon.
Because it says same size and weight. It doesn't say same strength, though, huh? I'm going to assume I'm stronger than this guy.
That's right. Yeah, I am a pretty odd makeup. Like I'm heavy, but it's a lot of muscle mass. So a normal guy my height and weight would barely be able to walk.
But I've been doing it for years.
You're like, why is he as wide as he is tall? That's crazy.
That's funny. That's good.
That's why we only shoot the video from chest up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
100%.
You
Yeah.
look like one of the Harkonnens. Oh, a Doom reference. What?
I'm lost. I don't know what that
Yeah.
is.
Dune. It's from Dune.
Okay.
There's a book and then movies called Dune. It's about
that-
Dune.
Is that
Dune.
Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya?
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard they're excellent. I just haven't seen them yet.
They're really great.
Yeah. Very interesting. Good stuff.
Good movies. Well, thanks for bringing that question, and sorry for being a wet blanket.
Hey, just try harder next time, Eric. Just try
Very
harder.
quick.
Deal.
I don't know if Ryan remembers this, but at some point I was I don't even remember where we were. I know there was a beanbag and I decided I wanted to try and wrestle Ryan. I think I was fit at the time or getting there.
Huh.
And Ryan, are you like 6'2"?
No, I'm 5'11".
Okay, Ryan's 6 foot. If he played basketball, he'd be 6'5". That's what he'd be in the in the
He
program.
already rounded up. He's actually 5'10".
Anyway, he's bigger than me, and so I decided I was going to wrestle him. Ryan just basically collapsed onto me. I mean, on purpose, because I think he was like, "Well, I'm not going to just beat this old man down." But he just collapsed on me into a beanbag, and I'm decently strong, and I can move anybody except for apparently Ryan. I can't move him an inch, and he's not wrestling me. He just laid on me. He just collapsed and landed on me, and I'm just like trying to get him off, and it was I felt violated. I didn't. It was
I now that you said that, I have a wrestling Ryan story as well.
Oh gosh.
It was my first year of master's commission, so first year out of high school, and we were hanging out in the apartment. And Ryan, I think you were an intern, or at least like youth leader, like high level youth leader at the time. Anyways, you came over to hang out at this apartment, and everybody was kind of wrestling, so we were wrestling, and I was doing fine for my size and no experience in wrestling at all. And so you go, "Oh, let's wrestle," and I was like, "Oh no, like, dude, you're gonna win." Like, again, like fighting on the moon. Like, I don't even want to do it. But I was drugged to the moon by Ryan. And so we start wrestling. Very similar story, just just an imposing like figure on me. And it's because like, Greg, I'm your height, but none of the strength. So so anyways, so I'm wrestling, I'm doing my best, and so I think we probably like wrestled for like 10 minutes straight, like just like both of us were sweating. Like, I probably punched you a couple times, like accidentally, because you at one point just really got into it, and I think you choked me out. And then we got up, and again, I didn't wrestle at all in high school. I never heard of like adrenaline high before, so I like was in like fight to the death mode in my brain apparently. So we got up, and I'm so like exhausted. It's like that. I actually start crying because like I was like coming down from like being
Nice.
so I had to like go step outside and like get my composure, because I just started, and I was so embarrassed, because like I think all these guys are gonna think I cried because I got hurt, and it's even worse. It's just because I like thought I was going to die.
I had feelings.
So, anyways, that's my Ryan wrestling story,
Guys.
Nice.
I don't recall this at all either story.
That's all we are to you.
And
That's
if there's,
all we are. Just throwaway people. Okay.
I mean, I've
You'd
wrestled
wrestle
so many
anybody.
people in my life.
Yeah. You're a wrestling slut.
I okay, I have this question for you about these incidents you
Welcome to
allege
the
happened.
podcast.
Do you have pictures of me wrestling, either of you?
Well, I was getting wrestled, so I didn't have time to
Do you
pull
have
out my
pictures?
camera.
Do you have
Take a
pictures?
picture.
Yes or no?
No, there is no.
Then
But
you got nothing.
I do have witnesses, and I can
I
pull
would-
those to the stand if you
Okay,
would
this
like, Your
might
Honor.
make you feel a little bit better, okay? Because I never wrestled, but my two best friends in high school were wrestlers, and so I had some experience, because they showed me some things. We wrestled around a little bit, and they would actually, I mean, they were smaller than me by like a lot. So in high school, I was like 215 pounds. One of them wrestled at 160 pounds. The other wrestled at 130 pounds, and they would twist me up into pretzel because they knew what they were doing and I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I learned some stuff from them. Well, when I was in master's commission, I would always try to wrestle Dan Nakai, because I knew he was a wrestler, and
Yeah.
Dan wrestled at 135, but
Yeah.
he was like
And
He was
like an
like,
all-state wrestler.
yes, he was like state
Yeah.
champion caliber.
Yeah.
And
Cardio for days.
but I outweigh this guy by 70 pounds. Like this
Mhm.
is gonna be cake. And I couldn't do anything against him, guys. So
Yeah.
maybe that makes you feel better.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I told him, "Hey, can you go wrestle Ryan after you made me cry?" So I'm glad I never asked again. You know, you don't follow up when you hire a hitman. You got to end the trail, and so I'm glad to hear things worked out.
So apparently I used to bully Richard Nakai when we were in school together. I don't recall this either,
Nice.
but I'm positive it was out of love. But anyways, when Richard and I did Master's Commission together, Richard decided he wanted to get his revenge, and so he challenged me to a wrestling match. Well, I knew he was a wrestler too, and he was closer to my weight, and so I'm like, "Oh, this isn't going to go well." And he wasn't leaving it alone. He wasn't going to let it go.
Yeah.
And so all I did was I laid on my stomach with my arms pulled in, one leg out so he couldn't flip me to my back. And I just laid there. And he tried everything he could to try to get me on my back, and he couldn't do it. And so, but I knew if I tried to actually engage him that he would he would twist me up. And so
Yeah.
I just laid there. I mean, apparently that's my move.
I like that you have selective memory on you being a bully. I don't remember.
Okay, I promise.
Look, he gave me a slushie.
No.
I just said, "Man, that looks really good." Then he
I
handed
promise
it to me. That's how I got it.
It was because I liked you. Like
Sure.
I tell Richard that all the time. Like Richard talks about whenever I'm with him, like how I bullied him. I'm like, it's because we were friends. Like I liked you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, whatever, Ryan, whatever, you know.
When you did the laundry and like shook out your pants, we were like, where did all this lunch money come from?
Kids are just giving it to me. I don't know why.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
just popular, I guess.
Yeah.
And now I'm a 40-year-old gimp. Can't walk without crutches. Joke's on me, I guess.
Yeah. That's it.
Well,
I like how we tell stories about people no one else knows other than
Yeah, right.
it'll be great. Yeah. So I guess on that note, do you mind if I transition to our odd story today?
Do it.
Okay.
There are no
well,
odd stories in the Bible.
especially this one. I'm really excited about this one. This is one of my favorite stories in the Bible growing up, just because this is like superhero level kind of stuff. Big comic book nerd. If you guys watch the YouTube videos, you'll know that. And so, but we are going to talk about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Which is the whole story is in Daniel chapter 3. If you're following along, if you want to, open Bibles, open Google, or just listen, we're going to read a couple passages out of this. But I think it's a really interesting story. Do you guys have any not history, but like, is this a story that you grew up with, or a story that you knew before you started really diving into the Bible? What's your guys' relationship, I guess, with this story?
Yeah, I probably knew it, like Sunday school and stuff. But that's about as far.
Nice.
And then, yeah, before Bible, before I was into it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, same. I probably heard of it before, and seen some kind of cartoon or, coloring page about it or something, but I never really understood it. Never understood why these guys were thrown into a fire.
Yeah.
Is there a Veggie Tales about this?
I think there might be. It is interesting. You say coloring pages. That sparked a memory of having a coloring page. I think any other coloring book that had a depiction of 3 men burning alive would be a coloring book that I would not give my children. But it's the Bible, so we're allowed to do that.
Oh,
Yep.
really quick timeout. That reminded me of something. So my son Titus, he's wanting to start reading scripture every day, which is totally awesome. Like that's totally his choice, not something we are making him do it. And like we suggest it, like you should read your Bible, you know, that kind of thing. And but like we don't make him. And he came to us. He's like, will you guys read with me? Like, awesome. So we've been doing these reading plans and stuff. And oh my gosh, a couple nights ago, Robin is like, you know, tucking him in and that kind of thing. And Titus is like, what should we read tonight, Mom? And she's like, well, Romans is good. And so they read Romans 1, and then they get to 18 through 32. And Robin's like, oh my gosh, what did I just read to my son? Because it's it's like basically the downward spiral of humanity. And you know, God gave humans up to burn with lust with each other and all that. So I'm like, oh my
you know
God,
what, son? Let's stop Romans. We're gonna move to Job.
Oh, what is this?
Anyways,
let's go about midway through Deuteronomy.
Yeah. How about the end of Judges? We're gonna
Be perfect.
So, anyways, I had to share that with you guys. Sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
No, I love
Great.
that.
there is a Veggie Tales, by the way. Rack, Shack, and Benny.
Well, okay, you're ruining a joke I have later.
I'm sorry.
So
Go ahead.
you know,
You're
thanks. Whatever.
I'm
I'll just
sorry.
skip that.
Failure.
So we're gonna talk about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Rack, Shack, and Benny. The book of Daniel is the kind of the where this story lives, but although chapter 3 is where it starts, the actual story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is right at the beginning of chapter 1. So we have a Babylonian king named Nebuchadnezzar. And he just decides, I'm going to take over Judah. There's this new king, only been in position for a little bit of time. Like they lose, epic, like just, you know, we don't get any description of the battle, but I mean, this is an entire nation versus an entire nation, and you get an understanding. This is a really big empire, the Babylonian Empire, that they can just decide to take over an entire nation of people. And so this is kind of what we're talking about. In the process, in the battle, they actually take down and destroy the first temple. So David and Solomon's temple that they built during their reign. And then he ransacks, takes a couple of the sacred items from that. But alongside that, he takes a bunch of the children of royalty to have them come into their courts. So Daniel chapter 1, verse 4, reading out of NLT, it goes like this: select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. This is Nebuchadnezzar to his vizier, basically. Make sure they are all well-versed in every branch of learning, are gifted with knowledge and good judgment, and are suited to serve in the royal palace. Train these young men in the language of literature in Babylon. The king assigned them a daily ration of food and wine from his own kitchens. They were to be trained for 3 years, and then they would enter royal service. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were 4 of the young men chosen, all from the tribe of Judah. The chief of staff renamed them with these Babylonian names. And so this is where we'll start to know the names that we're probably most familiar with. Daniel was called Belteshazzar. Hananiah was called Shadrach, Mishael was called Meshach, and then Azariah became Abednego. So this is not uncommon. This is what Babylonians would do. They would invade. They would take a bunch of young men, train these people. There's kind of no better way to take over a nation if you want them to still live in your empire than take the existing royalty and essentially change the bloodline. So, hey, you would know how to speak to your people already, but now we're going to teach you how to speak to us, and you're going to be our in-between person for the rest of your life and the generations that follow. Some of you guys with maybe, do you have, Ryan, Greg, do you have any other historical background or any thoughts on this so far?
Ryan, I've got.
You go first. You go first.
Okay. So the setup is, I mean, history goes forever, but so let's go with Babylon takes over from the Medes, and so now you've got what they call a Neo-Babylonian kind of setup, or basically just means the new Babylonian thing. Nebuchadnezzar comes into power, and He's actually a military guy before he's king, and seems like less so afterwards. But anyway, they actually come south, so it's a little further north, and so they come south into uh, Israel, into Judah, and so how can I'm sorry, I'm splitting this up. So you've got, if you think of almost like a football, and the top half is the nation of Israel, and the bottom half is the nation of Judah. They used to both be together in Israel, but they split after Solomon died. Solomon's son was a jerk, and they just ended up split. And Solomon seemed like he was too. And so the kingdom split, basically a civil. It really wasn't a civil war, but it did split, and so a bunch of religious significance there. But so through the prophets, they're both getting warned, hey, don't turn away from God. Israel is much, the northern kingdom is much worse, and they actually end up getting beaten and all their people taken and dispersed. And so if you ever hear the term diaspora, and where did the other tribes go? The 10 tribes, the lost tribes and stuff, that's when that happened. They all are gone. So Judah still exists, the southern kingdom, and that's where Jerusalem is. And Nebuchadnezzar comes and beats Jerusalem and makes them, puts them in a situation. Am I still okay with this, Eric? Okay.
Yeah, great.
Puts them in a situation where they can stay there as long as they pay tribute. And you've seen this in shows and stuff.
Yeah.
As long as they basically pay a tax to exist, then they can. And if they ever need soldiers or something, I mean, whatever the arrangement was.
Really quick,
well,
Greg. Sorry
yeah.
to interrupt. Is I'm seeing the movie 300 right now. Is that kind of what's going on, where Xerxes is invading these spaces, and he sends his people beforehand to go say, hey, like, bow down to King Xerxes, and he'll take care of you. But if not, like, we're gonna come after you. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
I'm guessing there probably was some type of that, but
Okay.
these things still had to happen, or at least in this situation, happen militarily. And so in that first one, Nebuchadnezzar takes the king, it seems like he might have gone up into Babylon and just kind of had a good life. But Nebuchadnezzar appoints his own king, someone from the family, but, and I'm blanking on the name. I feel like it starts with a Z, Zephaniah or something like that. But now that I think that was a priest. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm going to throw a bunch of names out and they'll all be wrong just because I'm coming off the top of my head here. Anyway, Nebuchadnezzar, so that's all set up. And there's a few other nations, Tyre and Moab, and I think Ammon, are all there too, and they're all under Babylonian rule. Then Babylon goes and tries to go a little too far and attacks Egypt. That one kind of ends in a draw, and there's a possibility at this stage that Judah, the king of Judah, decides, maybe Babylon's not that tough. We're going to cast them off, and we're going to side with Egypt. You see some of these references in some of the prophets saying, "Yeah, don't trust Egypt, trust God," and things like that. And anyway, I'm trying to go short here, but to me, this is a buildup of some of the point of the story, and why Daniel exists here, and what it's trying to do, among many things. And so. Those nations then basically refuse to pay tribute. And so Nebuchadnezzar comes with his army, and this time he's not playing in any way. They destroy Jerusalem, they destroy Solomon's temple, and everybody who's worth having, they deport out of there up into various places in Babylon. And so this is where a major transition happens, where before this point it's unclear, and I don't, in my opinion, it's unclear that there are like synagogues and places of religious teaching and stuff. Something completely different changes when they get up into Babylon, and that's a whole other group of stories, and really interesting about because it's some of the transition into what we currently call the Bible, the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, and then as we go with the New Testament.
Yeah.
Also, but so that's the buildup. They thought they were getting away with something, and then within those deportations, that's where Daniel and the other three end up in Babylon, having to figure out what do we do now. So there you go. That's what I thought. I think.
No, it's great. No, I think that's really, really important. It's going to build up to a few of the other things. One of the things I just want to focus on really quickly before we move into the meat of the story is the changing of their names. And so there's, I think, a way to read them. It's these royal kids, teenagers that are brought into Babylon, and they're going to, teach them all these ways. And they're going to eat from the king's kitchen. And there's a potential, at least I remember reading this in the beginning. I was like, this doesn't sound, like your whole nation got, demolished, but like you got out scot-free. You're going to eat in the king's kitchen. But when you kind of go into this is a re-education program. Like they are, for 3 years, they're going to go under intense training, and it is meant to beat them down, beat their culture out of them. And one of the things that they do in order to first do that is they're going to change your name. And not only that, they're going to change your name to almost humiliate your previous name. So what did your name mean? What was that Hebrew importance? And then now here's your Babylonian name. In Aramaic is where we're getting a lot of the writings here. And so Hananiah, which means Yah is gracious, his name is now changed to Shadrach, which is command of Aku. Aku is the god of the moon for the Babylonians. Mishael, who his name means who and what is El is, and his name is changed to Meshach, which is who is Aku. So again, they're just trying to change the names and kind of mess with their identities. Like, yeah, you used to be this, but now we're going to attribute it to our other god. And the last one, Azariah, which is Yah has helped, is changed to Abednego, which is slave of the god Nebu, which is the god of literacy. So they're just really messing with these guys. Like this is just the beginning. Like as much, again, they have all this access to food. We lead later in Daniel 1 that they've chosen to abstain away from a lot of the food that they were told to eat, and they end up being a lot healthier because of that. And so there's good things, but they're really in a tough situation. They know their history, they know where they come from, they were there in the battle and the war, and then now they're just in a complete unknown land, surrounded by people who killed their family. So this is not a happy situation. It's not a good situation. It's not easy for them. So there's an interesting thought that I just like pointing out right here. When Daniel, the writer, at least of most of this book, when he refers to them with their Hebrew names, but most of us only know them by their Babylonian names. So when Daniel references them, he says, yeah, it's Hananiah, it's Mishael, it's Azariah. But then anytime that we start to see the narrative change a little bit, they're only referred to their Babylonian names. In the same way, Daniel only refers to himself as Daniel, but as he's remarking on the Babylonians, when they're talking to him, they call him Belteshazzar. What do you think that means about the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do we think it's written by Daniel? Is it outside? Daniel's not referenced at all in chapter 3. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I probably lean toward it being outside authors and gathering material, basically bringing together a number of different pieces of information, of material, and that's where it came from. It's also this is an outside super nerd, but it's a chance that, like, when the story later on talks about Nebuchadnezzar going crazy, that it's not the Nebuchadnezzar we're talking about, it's a different guy. And so it would account for some of the maybe oddities of which story belongs where and things like that. But that's where but I also, it's not a huge deal. Yeah,
I think there's something interesting, again, looking at how the Bible's written, that although I don't know, maybe some people who are just starting to read the Bible maybe haven't gotten to some of the formal schooling of it, that you've been told like David wrote the Psalms or Solomon wrote the Proverbs, but it's a collection, and so there's multiple writers. And
Yeah.
does that deny the validity of it, that there's multiple
Right.
authors or multiple points of view potentially in this? I don't think so. I actually think it brings a lot of it together. Jewish writing has a lot of mix, and people have different opinions. If you look at the Talmud, it's writer on top of writer, rabbi, scholar, Pharisee, Sadducee, like it's all of it kind of stacked together. So this just kind of mimics the writing structure, I think, a little bit. I did a little bit of research because I wondered, like, where is Daniel potentially in this? A couple references in the Sanhedrin section of the Talmud suggest that Daniel was out digging a great river in Tiberias. Another says that he was bringing choice alfalfa from a distance. And then another says he was gathering high quality pigs in Alexandria. So
Yeah,
either
that's what
way, it's got to be the high quality pigs.
Mhm.
Yeah. So either way, Daniel is out of the picture right now. And seemingly in chapter 2, we get an understanding that like Daniel's actually promoting and working his way up the ranks through kind of a crazy dream scenario that the Nebuchadnezzar has. And this is important because Nebuchadnezzar has a dream of a statue, is really confused by it. Daniel interprets this dream that there's this head of gold, and that represents Nebuchadnezzar. And then the rest of it kind of falls apart from there. And I like to, although it doesn't directly say this, I like to think that, like most kings we read about, he only hears head of gold in a statue and then decides, I should make a statue of
Yeah.
complete gold and make it giant, because Daniel chapter 3 opens up that way. And so I'm going to dive into it right here. And so makes this big statue, says, hey, everybody needs to bow down to it. Because Daniel gets this promotion, he actually brings, for the sake of time, I'm going to call him Rack, Shack, and Benny.
There you go. Nice.
He brings Rack, Shack, and Benny up with him in the promotion. And so all the people who are high officials are gathered together and says, hey, you need to bow down to this statue. If you don't, we're going to throw you in a big fire. And because Rack, Shack, and Benny are good Hebrew boys who have done the right thing so far, they refuse to bow, and some tattletalers tell on them. Okay, so here we go. Daniel chapter 3, verse 13 says, Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I have set up? By the way, this had nothing to do with his gods. He's just throwing that in. It's a kind of you'll see a couple different times he really throws blame around a lot. It's an interesting characteristic of his. He says, "But I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made. I have made when you hear the sound of musical instruments. But if you refuse, you'll be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue from my power?" Okay, this is a little bit of an odd question, but I want to throw this to both of you guys because I really want to hear your thoughts on this. We are looking at martyrs potentially here, right? They're going to die for their faith. That is what they're faced up against. I think they're in 2025 in the Western church. We are fascinated with martyrdom, so much so that I think we potentially might be thinking we're persecuted when we're not. Would you guys speak to that? Like, I think sometimes we have Christians that read the Bible and go, "That's me. I'm under persecution." Like, do you guys feel that? Maybe that's just me. I don't know. I just want to put that out there because it's the first time a story is bringing this up.
No, so I see this kind of stuff in like my YouTube Shorts feed all the time of some political commentator who happens to be Christian. He's doing this question and answer thing on the campus of some liberal college, and they always end up attacking his faith. And in the comments, people always make comments like that. Christians are so persecuted today. Da da da. Like, they hurt your feelings. Is that what it is? Like that's not persecution. I just read a story a couple days ago about a Christian in the Middle East somewhere. I think he converted from Islam. Hamas threatened him, tried to convert him back, and he refused. And they found his body in a nearby village. Destroyed by machetes, like just killed him with machetes, and then dumped his body in a nearby village to send a message. And like, that's persecution. That's martyrdom. Somebody disagreeing or saying that our religion is invalid, that's not persecution. Like, like what we experience or perceive as persecution is not persecution. So.
Yeah, if I choose to go somewhere that I know people disagree with me already, and that's my point, you can call it evangelism or whatever you want. I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying you're not being persecuted if you walked
Yeah.
And in there to have this happen.
Yeah.
You didn't have a YouTube channel because so you could be boring. You didn't, we're just going to sit here and just, there's some flash that people are paying attention to. There's, but yeah, the idea that currently we're persecuted is laughable in comparison to actual persecution. And that we build up the idea of martyrdom, which is a real thing and should be honored and everything else, but to choose that's what I'm going to identify with. Come on.
Legitimate question. So back in 2020, all the COVID stuff and churches getting shut down and that kind of thing, not being allowed to meet, when some other institutions were and that kind of thing, people called that persecution. Would you guys consider that persecution?
No. I'm going to come out hard. No.
And why not, Greg?
No. I have a lot of opinions about COVID, and so how can I?
It was fake.
Jeez. And I'm realizing you're probably now I'm on camera. If the blue little box shows, yeah. Good Lord. We were told even before the whole thing was understood to not gather. And the lack of biblical literacy became painfully clear. What I thought was more that people were basically on the same page. We might believe different, or have different opinions about things, but we were essentially on the same page. We understood the same stories. It became ridiculously painful to realize the lack of biblical understanding was so profoundly deep that it was crazy that they could use certain verses that had to do with actual persecution. That if you're being told to justifying somewhat disobedience and then ridiculous rhetoric with scripture verses that had nothing to do with that situation. Anyway, someone's going to hate, but this is what I think. And
no,
I'm right.
I think that's actually the next question I had for you guys is this story telling us to stand up to government authority and rebel when your faith is called into question.
Oh man.
um,
So really quick, I have some thoughts if I
Please.
may. I don't think so. And here's maybe connecting a dot as to why. So in Romans chapter 13, Paul instructs the Roman church to submit to governing authorities, right? All authority is put in place by God. And so rebelling against those authorities is rebelling against, and he's basically talking about like, I from my understanding, don't rise up, no rebellions, that kind of thing. Like don't bow your knee, and worship, don't claim allegiance, but like also don't be a troublemaker, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And Paul was saying that to a church who was being persecuted by the Roman Emperor Nero, who was burning Christians alive because Nero, or he was burning Christians. I think he would hang them on stakes for everyone to see, and all because he was burning down Rome. People got mad, and so he blamed Christians, and he decided to punish Christians for what he was doing.
Yeah.
That's real persecution. And what was Paul's response? It wasn't rise up, do something about it. It was submit, submit. And so yeah.
And that's the response across the board. It's not get your guns or get your swords or whatever. It's don't give in. Don't change your confession. Don't change in whom you trust. When they force you to, and it means machetes, then that's it. And that's super easy. And I'm offended at myself for even mentioning that. I don't have the right to speak that. You understand? That's the value at which we should be honoring the type of real. To devalue it as if, well, the government disagrees with me, therefore, no. Let's call it at best pre-persecution, because nothing has been taken from you. Well, we couldn't gather. I get that, but it's for people's safety right now.
Yeah.
Once the understanding grew, then we're okay. We can kind of manage this and we can gather again. But we can't be patient enough to allow things for information to gather. It becomes just silly. And then to identify that as persecution and stuff like that, it's just not. You have not had enough hard things happen to you.
Yeah. Could I play devil's advocate a little bit?
No.
And say, well, how long do we do that until we give an inch, they take a mile? How long do we keep turning the other cheek? How many times do we forget? What if it's beyond 490 times that we've, at what point? Like, I think that's kind of at least from what I see in a lot of the now rhetoric that didn't exist in the beginning, but now that I think, and I'm not trying to do an us versus them. I think we're all us. But what we're talking about is a very Christian nationalistic thought process where you're thinking through. I like to believe that you think through the first title, which is Christian, and then nation, which is this is what God would want in our nation. He would not want persecution to even be the potential. Right. And so I would say, like, devil's advocate a little bit, like how to a little bit of the story, how does Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego know that they shouldn't just bow and live to fight another day versus stand up for what you believe is right? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, civil disobedience is what we're talking about. And I was going to use the word fortunate, but we've been able to see, if we'll pay attention, to, in addition to Jesus, two relatively modern versions of this. In Gandhi in India, and then Martin Luther King Jr. over the civil rights side. And you actually see the contrasting points of view between Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X in styles, in not just the people, but in what they believed in. And one brought its point of view from the teachings of Jesus, and one did not. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about if all we were talking about was ethics, they got their ethical information from two different sources, and one of them was Jesus, and the one who was Jesus said civil disobedience. It doesn't mean that we're soft. It doesn't mean that we're weak. It doesn't mean that we're pansies. It means we're just not going to give up the essence, the essential things.
Yeah.
And so, and it made tons of people uncomfortable. And the point of it, the end result of it, is evil shows itself.
Yeah.
It is slow, but it's profound.
Yeah.
It, instead of using the very system that created the problem, it pushes the system to where it becomes so ridiculously obvious
Yeah.
that the lesson lasts longer. That we're not paying attention to that lesson is crazy to me. But at how long do you do it? Well, the 7 times 7, 70 times 7, 490, I forgive him 490. That's not the point of that story. That story
Right.
is a ridiculous number.
Yeah.
To where there's literally, you're not going to keep track of that. And if you do, you've missed the entire point.
Yeah.
We are supposed to take it and represent God, because the true change is not dominating somebody. Even in the aggression that I'm giving right now, I would disagree with in this.
Yeah.
It's not dominating, and I'm trying to calm down. There's no justification for it. It's not domination. It's kindness.
Yeah.
But it's not giving up. It's not denying the most essential thing. Who is he? And he's the one I follow, period.
It's hard right now because inevitably I know there's going to be somebody listening to this conversation, podcast, YouTube, whatever. They're listening and they're waiting to hear what we say, and if it doesn't confirm what they believe, then they're going to tune us out.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so like that just upsets me. It makes me mad. I'm like, my flesh wants to be like, well, you idiot. Like, you idiot, listen to us. We kind of have an idea what we're talking about, but like Greg said,
Yeah.
like that is not the response.
Yeah.
Kindness. And Andy Stanley, as polarizing as he can be, he had a line in a sermon series a few years ago. I don't remember which one exactly, but he said, if Christians leverage anything other than love, everybody loses.
Yeah.
And it's always stuck with me. And I'm like, that's 100% true. The minute any Christian starts to leverage anything other than love, everything goes to crap. And so in the face of persecution, in the face of resistance, whatever, we have to meet it with love. Now, there is a difference between the government telling us during COVID, you can't meet in person, and the government telling us just for no reason, okay, you can't worship God anymore, right?
Yeah. You can never meet. Yeah.
That's not the same thing.
Yes.
It's not even close. In China, I went to China in 2017 for a short-term missions trip, and Chinese nationals are under the threat of jail, like prison, or death if they practice any religion. And so, like, that's persecution. That like that's what real persecution looks like, and we're not suffering that. So
Absolutely. Which I think is like one of the interesting things about this story is it takes the I would say, similar to the stories that you told, Ryan, the highest kind of extreme of martyrdom, which is the threat of death, and yet it seemingly feels so small because the response is so small. I liked what you said, Greg, is the civil disobedience. It's this, I am not going to gather a crowd. I am not going to make noise about this because this actually has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the God I follow. And so I think one of the temptations that pastors face in that COVID season is you have a very big audience for a lot of those churches that are looking to you to be a voice of God in those situations. And to my pastor friends, including myself, I don't know if I handled the situation around COVID super well with where I was. I think before we very quickly give a response to what we should do, We should just spend way more time in prayer.
Mm.
And then I think one of the things that was a huge downside was the churches realized how individually isolated they were, especially in Protestant faiths, where you can have all of these multiple denominations or non-denominational, and there's no oversight authority saying this is going to be our response to this, good or bad. There is at least just a unified response. I would say, like, one of the things if we ever hit that type of thing again, honestly, both of you guys would be people that I would call, and I would go, hey, my first instinct is to do this. What do you think? Am I wrong? Am I right? I'm not getting confirmation in my prayer. I'm not doing any of that. Thankfully, in a situation like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it was black and white. Again, they had the option. They would have lived to fight another day, would have been with Daniel. Maybe we would have read about them later on, but we don't. And what we do get is the story right here. So I'm going to pick it back up. Verse 16 of Daniel chapter 3. It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you." Come on. It's almost like
Yep.
you guys are setting this
So
up and
good.
you've read it before. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. Still giving authority, still honoring, still all of the stuff that we just talked about.
My favorite part is next.
This is, I was just about to say, favorite part. But even if he doesn't, we
Yep.
want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. Okay, but even if he doesn't, powerful statement. We I think all three agree this is our favorite part of the story right here. Speak to that. Why is this your favorite part, Ryan?
Just that they've resolved in their hearts before they ever got to that moment.
Yeah.
How we're going to respond when something like this happens. We believe that he's able to save us from the fire. We believe he is.
Yeah.
But even if he doesn't, we're not going to bow to fear. We're not going to let fear control us, because we trust him no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Greg?
Yeah, there's not a ton to add to that. That's the essence of it. We've also kind of I don't want to devalue faith in a way that would say the only correct response or thing that can happen when I actually have faith is I get what I want.
Come on. Yeah.
So faith is also in the correct situation, I will not move. Our God is able. We'll see what he does. He's going to save us, even if he doesn't.
Yeah.
You just
Love
need to
that.
know.
So sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done.
I'm done. Yeah, go ahead.
I think to the point we were speaking about earlier too, about like rising up and kind of like the activism attitude we were talking about. Like, I think it's important to note like their posture towards Nebuchadnezzar as they're saying this.
Yes,
Your majesty, they're still showing respect and reverence towards him. They're not being disrespectful. They're not giving him the middle finger and
right.
like, come get us. They're not provoking.
Yeah.
They're trying to be respectful and submissive, but they've just drawn a line and they've created a boundary.
We'd prefer if you didn't burn us alive.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I wrote this down just as I was prepping for today. That to what you just said, Ryan, is there is a difference between the honoring the position, whether you like it or not, of the authority. That again, Romans kind of gives us this example of, hey, I'm definitely not saying you're supposed to like this, but what we've given as example of our Lord Jesus was he did not start an uprising, yet he could have, and for most of us, we would have wanted him to.
Mhm.
And we get a lot of evidence that most people were really upset that he was not. So it had nothing to do with not considering the position or the honor. What I think needs to be talked about here is we will not worship your gods or any other idol. So
Yeah.
they're going all the way back to these commands that they were given. They are remembering we were God's people before we ever became Babylonian, before you ever
Yeah.
took us. We know our history, we know our heritage. And hey, we used to be slaves in Egypt, and God freed us from that. We're not going back to Egypt.
And it wasn't we're not going to serve your gods, bow down to your idol because they're Babylonian and we're Jewish. It was we're not doing that because we belong to the Lord. We
Amen.
trust God, right? So it's not about our nation versus their nation. It's about, who do I trust? I trust him, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
love that. So hey, let me kind of get this last section right here because I know we're getting ready to hit our time. But verse 19, Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up, threw them into the furnace, fully dressed to their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because the king, in his anger, had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. What's the face?
I'm trying to distort my face with
Oh,
rage.
just face the third. Yeah, I mean, it's probably gonna be a little bit that. It's gonna be one of those, like, I remember my mom saying, like, "Oh, if you keep making your face like that, it's gonna get stuck that way," like
yeah.
the old Midwest idioms. So a little pause right here, and because the temperature of the furnace is not really important, but I just like doing this type of information. So this is not important to the story. I just want to bring this to you guys. So all of this is hyperbolic, and like the writer is trying to show an image of, like, even potentially to the standard of the size of the gold statue and the gathering of the people, and the even Nebuchadnezzar's kind of giant ego that's here. All of this is meant to invoke an image in your head. So with that, let me expand that image a little bit. So a furnace large enough to walk through would be used for like melting large chunks of metal of some kind. This is the Bronze Age. So most of their weapons and farming tools were made out of bronze. So bronze, its melting point is at 1,675 degrees Fahrenheit. So 7 times that is 11,725 degrees Fahrenheit. To put it in perspective, we understand the sun, the surface of the sun, to be 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And you go, okay, cool. Just, you're starting to understand how big in the rage and the intensity that we're talking about. Even the 3 men die. And so I was kind of like doing that, like, do we even have anything that reaches that temperature here on Earth? Like, how silly, how crazy is the story? So the best equivalent temperature that we can get to that level, surface of the sun level, is when an atomic bomb detonates and everything around it is instantly vaporized. So to illustrate the rage, the danger, and how intense this situation is, Nebuchadnezzar doesn't want these men to be burned alive. He wants to vaporize them. Like, that's the level in which we're talking about. The danger level is not just death, but vaporization. He wants to erase every trace of these 3 men. Like, that's the rage that we're talking about. Okay, so we got that in there. Rakshak and Benny.
By the way, the Bible
into a
does
fire.
do that. We've talked about hyperbole before. The Bible does do this from time to time.
Yes.
An example would be Jonah. When he runs away, he goes to the other side of the earth, as far as the maps then mattered. Anyway, go ahead.
No, totally. So verse 23, so Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames to be vaporized. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men, unbound, walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god." Okay, And pause just real quick right here. Other translations say sons of God. A few others say sons of the gods. And the King James version and a few others say son of God. Your guys' thoughts here. Is this Jesus? Is this an angel? Is this a different heavenly being? I know it's not the point, but entertain me for a second. When you read this, what do you get?
Give me a second. Go ahead, Ryan.
My first inclination is angel. Like it's an angel. I think we're just, when I say we, I mean just Western Christians in general. I think we're way too quick to read Jesus into the Old Testament, and it robs the stories in the Old Testament of their power. I think when we just automatically resort to Jesus, oh, it's Jesus, and that might sound weird, especially when like Jesus is the answer to everything,
Sure.
that might sound weird, but like I don't want to read Jesus into situations he's not there, because I want to see the story for what it is.
Yeah.
Am I open to it being Jesus? Yes, I'm open to that. Do I think it probably was? No, it could have been an angel. It could have been another thing. Like who knows? But like going off the data we have, I think it was probably some sort of angelic being. That's my first instinct.
Yep.
Sometimes the way I deal with that, I agree. First of all, the way my question is if Jesus is added into this, does it change the story? And the answer is no, it doesn't at all. And so we don't need to do that to be impressed by God.
Yeah.
So it's standalone. We don't need Jacob to be wrestling with pre-incarnate Christ. We just don't. If you want that, then fine. I encourage you not to teach it that way just because there's not enough data, but do your thing. If seeing that as Christ, the Son of God, is really encouraging to you, that I also don't want to take that from you. I really, really don't. And I don't mean that demeaning in any way. I want you to keep engaging it. It just may not do the work beyond maybe kind of titillating you a little bit.
Yeah. Ryan, did you have something else?
I was gonna be sarcastic. I was gonna say, you mean the ram in the thicket isn't Jesus? Is that what you're telling me, Greg?
No, he's a sheep. He's a lamb. Okay, I agree as well. Without trying to be that guy who doesn't really know Hebrew, but tries to find Hebrew words. Looking it up, the Hebrew word that's used here has no reference to El, Yahweh, Jehovah, any of that stuff. It actually is closer to the Hebrew Aramaic or Hebrew's version of the Aramaic word, which would of the Babylonian culture's gods. So it's a plural. If this is not written by Daniel, it's another author that's coming in here. Daniel does refer to God, and he uses the correct name, and he refers to him in the correct name. So if Daniel wrote this, I think he would have said God if it was God. Since he didn't write it, it's potentially a secondhand story. Maybe they're trying to get the image that Nebuchadnezzar once again is having a confrontation with his faith, where he believed his own. Now he's having to assert that there's something more powerful at hand here. So a couple little observations as we wrap up here. I was reading a commentary on this that I think was so beautiful. If you guys want to use this for your messages, or people want to use this for some study time, the fire didn't burn them. It didn't burn their clothes. The only thing it burned off was the binds that hold them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Something beautiful
cool.
about that.
Yeah,
God
that's cool.
is set the captive free. This is his mission. And then the other thing is that once they were free, they didn't run out of the fire. They stayed in it. So what sustained you in the fire, don't rush out of it. Stay in the middle of it. until he brings you out. If he got you through it, he'll bring you out of it. So
Yeah.
I don't know if somebody needs to hear that as they're listening today. You might be feeling like you're in the fire. God's with you, and don't rush out of it. He's saving you through it. He's in the valley, as David would have put it, and he's walking with you.
I know something someone needs to hear.
Come on.
There is another in the fire standing next to me.
All right, let's wrap it up here. Verse 20.
let
Go ahead.
me hit
Yeah.
to come back to context.
Yes.
In general, I think you've got Israel having been, or you've got Judah, the people from Jerusalem, and basically all of the relevant Hebrews are removed from the land that God had promised them. They're now, their temple is destroyed. And the question is, where is God? Does Yahweh matter? Has he abandoned us? These few stories in Daniel, and actually the whole book is no, the covenant is still in effect. The agreement is still in effect. God is still faithful. The narrative around Jerusalem being destroyed from the prophets is we have caused this. And this is so God is still saying, I'm still involved. Even in your unfaithfulness, I'm still faithful. We talked about this with the Balaam story. Even if Israel's unfaithful, God is still faithful. It doesn't make anything okay. It still has to go through the process of getting things moved and corrected and things like that, trying to fix the mess that people have created.
Right.
But God is faithful even when we're not. He is present. You think he's only present in the temple. He's present even in the places of biggest evil. When Babylon, the biggest, I mean, oh my gosh, kind of place, and Jonah, Assyria, God is still present. God is still active. You think it's evil. You think it's dark. God is God. You've forgotten who he is. Remember, this is the God who just looked at things and went, I feel like this should have a light. And so it happened. And that we're a little dismayed, or even a lot dismayed, is not the standard, is not the gauge on which God operates. Either he's God or he's not. Either we're going to trust him or we won't. Is nice and binary. It's harder to work out day to day, but this is at least part of the point of this entire, not just the story, but the whole movie of Daniel is even in Babylon, God does stuff. And this is why they actually did reconceive their connection to Yahweh.
Man,
Beautiful.
I think I would have been a terrible Jew if I was an Israelite back in the days of the Bible. Maybe it would be good, make me a good Jew. What I'm about to say, but Greg, you're talking like, and the questions presented: is the covenant still relevant? Is God still with us? Immediately, my first thought was Genesis 15, the covenant God made with Abraham, where God said, I'm going to take all the responsibility on me. And if you know, like it's all on my shoulders to make sure this covenant happens. And so I would have been like, of course it's still relevant, you know, like, I don't know if that makes me good or bad, but like, I don't know. That's immediately where my mind went. Like, I'm like, how in my mind, I'm like, how do they not remember this? How do these people not remember God made this covenant to them? He said, I'm going to do all the work. I'm doing all the work. How do you not remember something like that? So like,
absolutely.
That's maybe
And I would,
yeah,
I would preach that let's imagine we were back in COVID. God's still present in your non-meeting. God's still present in your quiet Zoom worship. God is still present, even if it's just you in a room. These are significant things. You feel like the furnace is in front of you. I don't want to disrespect your perspective on that. I just want to remind you of God is the better communication, I think, now than I was earlier. But that's God is still God, regardless of where I'm at.
Yeah. Love it. Man, you guys what are you guys, pastors? Come on.
kind of.
Okay, let me wrap it up here. One of the questions I have, and I want to kind of answer it while I'm reading this, because we have talked a little bit about martyrs, and some of the question that I have that I think is appropriate, and I don't have a clean answer for this. I wish I did, because then I could manufacture it. But why does God save some people from martyrdom, and why doesn't He save others? To me, there's a greater story. One, we were saved the moment that Jesus died. What we're talking about is the difficulty here on earth, and that's always going to exist. The suffering, one way or another. Not trying to belittle it, just kind of happens. But why does He save that? I think there was a big work that God was trying to do in Babylon, and we see it really right here, and it blows up from this time, and it does take time for it to happen, but it starts going from here. Verse 28, then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the kings. This is Nebuchadnezzar saying this, by the way. He's wrapping up the own moral of the story in which he's the bad guy. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own, including myself. I'm adding that in there. Therefore, I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no other God who can rescue like this. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. As we're going to read, and we're going to tell the story of Daniel and a few other stories about him later on in this podcast, I'm sure. This decree does not last very long, but it is important because all the high officials are around at this point. And not only did they see that this happened, but that now Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel are in high promoted officials within Babylon. And so I know it's cheesy, but what you thought was a setback, come on, anybody, was a setup.
So I think people read this too, and they read, oh man, that it, and this particular story ended well. Nebuchadnezzar, he got his head on straight. God is honored again, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're going to be high officials in the king's kingdom. All that. Oh, happy ending. But I want to point out too, Nebuchadnezzar's response still is not the correct one. Anybody who utters a word against the God of Shadrach, they're going to be dismembered. Nope, that's not the correct response either.
You don't believe in my God? I will burn you down. I will hunt your children and kill them in front of you.
Hey, Nebby, baby, come on, relax. That's what I imagine. That's how Babylonians talked, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm pretty sure. And now I'm remembering Shadrach, Meshach, or the VeggieTales one, where's the bunny. Oh, yeah. Pretty sure it's the chocolate bunny episode.
So I want to add this really quick too. When we started reading this, I feel like I say this a lot that this triggered this, but immediately thoughts of the Tower of Babel started running through my mind as we were reading this, and the conversation we had around that, and how they left where God in Genesis, the people left where God was trying to keep them to look for something else, and they went towards Babylon, right? Or they went towards Babel. And here I think it's not lost on me, but now Babylon came to find the Israelites. Right, the Israelites aren't looking for Babylon necessarily, but Babylon found them, and I just think there's an interesting dichotomy there, and I also see this as a full-on attack of identity, and kind of should inform, in my opinion, this should inform us on how to respond when our identity is under attack. Our identity as Christ followers, so I love this story. It's so good.
Yeah. We didn't land on Babylon. Babylon landed on us. Okay.
Exactly.
Malcolm X was stuck in my head now.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Hey, so that's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's where chapter 3 ends. We don't hear from them again. This is the only time, and it's only through miscellaneous writings that it's potentially assumed that it wasn't this time, but they stood up another time and they were killed. Some of what we can assume by that is Daniel is later threatened in a couple chapters later at a completely different age of his life. But you would think, oh, they've definitely learned their lessons, right? But no, anybody who follows Yahweh is absolutely having a target on their back at all times, primarily because of how blessed they are. Anyways, that is where the story ends. That's all I got for you guys. Any other final thoughts? Any other takeaways that we should learn from this?
There'll be another in the fire. That's all I
Come
just
on.
keep thinking about. So
There we go. Come on. We need another Joel Houston album. So
no,
Nice.
it's good, guys. It's good.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, does that wrap it up?
This
yeah.
conversation has been adequate.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a good one.
Mine too.
Good one.
No. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah,
Heck
thank
yeah.
you. All right, guys. If you are liking what you're hearing,
Getting to know you.
I want
Gosh.
you can add that in anytime, Greg. I love it. It's always good for a laugh. If you're liking what you're hearing, if you're enjoying the Odd Testament podcast, we would love your support. The best way to help us keep bringing this odd, weird content to you is by showing us some love on social media. And here's how you can do that. Pause for effect.
Like and subscribe.
First, take a moment to rate us on whatever platform you listen to. If you listen on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment.
Tell us how you would win a lunar battle. in the
Yes,
comments.
yes.
Come on.
Oh, I would love to hear that.
We will read the
Yes.
best comment on the next podcast.
Yes,
Nice.
please.
Nice.
If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, 5-star reviews, rate us, follow us, all that good stuff. We want that. Next, don't forget to subscribe on anything to make sure you're caught up on all our latest content, the latest episodes. Our episodes drop every Monday, so keep your eyes open for that. And finally, don't forget to follow us on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. We're everywhere. You can't escape us. So
And
follow
look for
us.
our new merch.
Yeah, we've got merch.
Swim caps. That,
Oh, guys,
it
so
was
I
cheap and
actually
available.
I actually do have a little pillow that I had made with our logo on it. So it's gonna have our 3 faces and the Odd Testament podcast printed on it. So like, yeah.
Is it one of those donut pillows for your hemorrhoids?
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
nope. It wasn't that. You had to take it there, didn't you, Greg? See,
Why
this is why
Greg's face so wet on the picture?
this is why I wrestle people. This is why I wrestle people. So your support means the world to us. And together we can continue to share this amazing, odd, weird, strange content with the world. So guys, thank you. Thank you for being on with us tonight. Got you guys, Eric, Greg, thanks for joining me tonight in the
yeah.
conversation. Seriously,
Yeah.
it was really good tonight. I had a lot of fun. So we will see you guys next time.
Peace.